Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Greg, and today we are going to be reviewing this all-in-one diesel heater that I purchased from Temu. This will be an honest review of this Temu diesel heater on setup, performance, pros, cons, and final thoughts. And let's see what else was included inside the packaging. We have a little box of accessories. We have a few little vent attachments here for the hose. We have a installation user manual, which looks pretty good. We'll get into that in a second. And then we have our exhaust, our intake, and air hose. Let's open these up and see what's all in the installation box. Alrighty. Alright, that is everything included. So these appear to be mounting feet for more of a permanent installation, which I'm assuming just slide on here, which looks like they do. So that's cool. You can bolt that down to something if you're going to use this in a van build or a camper or something like that. So that is quite convenient. So we'll take a look at that here. We also have the cold air intake filter, you could call it. Essentially, it's just going to keep some bugs out. And then you have all your clamps for your hose and exhaust and intake. So that's nice. And then last is what they call a muffler. And from my experience with the two other diesel heaters that I own, these don't really do anything. I can try to show you an inside look, but it's essentially just a coiled spring inside. It doesn't do a whole lot. It might reduce the noise levels to a few decibels below what it would be without that. So I don't know. Up to you if you want to run that or not, but I typically do not. But we'll get into that here. So here are the feet I mentioned earlier, and these basically just attach like so. They just slide on so you can have a mounting point. I'm assuming these also maybe mount to the inside as well. Could be wrong here. Yeah, they do. So if you need to move around your positioning, that's a nice little thing. All right, let's get an overall look at this thing. Here is the front of the unit with the control panel. It does come with a remote, which is always a nice feature to turn on or off or dial up and down your temperature. Very simple. We'll see if that works in a little bit. This is your exhaust outlet, which you also can connect that tubing to so you can have more directional heat. This, I believe, does come off if you want to mount this somewhere else. You can probably pull out the lead a little bit and like flush mount that in your van or whatever custom setup you want to do. But this looks all good and straightforward. Looking at the side, nothing to really see there. The back, we have our electrical connection, our power connection. So you just use some ring terminals, and we'll go into the power ways of powering this thing here shortly. Here is the air inlet side, and then last the other side view, which is actually your fuel level. This is just a see-through area to see your fuel level in the tank, which is handy. And that is basically it. I believe this is a 1-gallon tank. As far as efficiency goes, diesel heaters are super efficient. It's one of the reasons I love these things. You can run a gallon of diesel for about 24 to 30 hours, and that is on low setting. which these things are crazy hot, so low is usually pretty good. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open up this case to take a closer look at the inside and make sure there isn't any obstructions or kinked fuel lines or any loose items or anything that could cause a fire. You probably don't need to do this, but you know, it's just a little peace of mind to see what's in the machine. You can also see how it works, see what the components are, and like I said, just make sure nothing's wrong in there. So we'll open this thing up. All right, hopefully this just lifts up and out. Looks like you gotta pull these away. And, oh, probably take off the cap just in case. There we go. Nice. Easy. All right, let's take a look at the inside of the unit. There's not a whole lot to these things. This area here, this is the actual diesel heater portion. The burn chamber, the intake, exhaust, not a lot to this. Then we have our fuel tank, which seems a little flimsy, but that's because the case holds everything in tightly, so that's not an issue. And then the main thing I wanted to look at here is the connection to the fuel tank and the routing. And it looks like there's no kinks. The hose actually looks really good. As far as any other cables or cords getting in the way here, everything looks really good. This is a nice little layout that they did. Everything's neat and tidy. It's overall better than what I expected. Taking a peek on this side. Let's see. Yeah, everything looks great. So here's the main thing you want to look at is the connection of the fuel line. This, by the way, is the diesel fuel pump. That is the main component that feeds the diesel heater. These are also, as a side note, notoriously loud for clicking. This was advertised as, I believe they said whisper quiet, so we'll see when we get to that. But I do notice there is a rubber mounting system here to kind of isolate some of the noise, which is awesome. You can buy these kind of aftermarket usually, but they included that, so impressed with that. And then, like I said, the fuel lines themselves going in and out, there's no kinks, you know, there's no extra long cable that you'd have to worry about it kinking. So I may not even replace this hose with my kind of rigid tubing that I usually use. We'll see if there's any issue with the heat here, but as far as how it's routed and the lengths and everything, there is it's looking very good. There's no issue with anything kinking here. So everything looks good. We're going to close it up and then continue on to powering this unit and filling it up and test firing. We'll get into some of the performance. Here's a look at the bottom of the unit. So you can see we have an exhaust outlet and a air intake for the cold air intake. So after reading and examining this installation diagram a little bit further, I do believe I am mistaken and that the exhaust pipe is actually located farthest from the fuel line and fuel pump. So that is a very good thing. So just your cold air will be mounted next to the fuel line. So that's great. So now we need to decide how and which way we're going to route the exhaust, because that is our main concern, the heat. There is this little cutout here for some of the exhaust or inlet tubing. My concern would be the exhaust does get extremely hot, so I don't know if this plastic can handle it. I'd be a little concerned about that. So my thought is I'm going to go out and up the side here. Because this is the non-fuel tank side, so we wouldn't have to worry as much about the heat, and there are some little clamps to kind of keep it up off the unit. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to do exhaust and cold air intake. The cold air intake we are going to put through this cutout here, which makes sense. Let's start with the exhaust side here. You can see I already kind of pre-bent this a little bit. Looking at the exhaust piping, There is a longer side here and a shorter side here. To my understanding, utilize the shorter side because you can get a tighter bend once you pop this guy on like so. So that'll be better for clearance issues. And then we can just bend this accordingly and put our hose clamps on, and this will be good to go. Let's get this in a position where I can actually reach it. There is a cutout on the side, which that is super handy for installing this. I didn't realize that. Here, I'll show you. So I was questioning the design here for a moment, and then I realized there's this cutout on this other side. Didn't know what that was for. And that is for easy access to attaching your hose clamps. So I really appreciate that design feature, because now I can stick in my little extension here, which just barely fits, and stick a drill on there and tighten it up. So that is a very nice little thing they thought about here. Otherwise you'd have to take the case off and it would just be very awkward. So this cutout here, very nice. I like that. All right, next up is the fresh air intake, which is very simple. Just slide it on here like so, and then that's gonna end up routing around there somewhere. Next up is mounting this intake to the casing. There is no instructions on this in the manual, but I think it's just kind of common sense, just kind of figure it out as you go type thing. There are different brackets included. What makes the most sense to me is to just run one of these clamps directly off this here, and this is going to be situated adjacent to the actual fan intake, which will be just fine. So that looks like a good place to mount it to me. All right, there we go. That's where that is going to stay. And then this just basically unscrews if you need to take it off for transporting, if it needs to fit somewhere. But you can basically put this anywhere, just you don't want the exhaust flowing into the intake. That would be very bad. We're going to go over the wiring next. It does include this little lead here with these ring terminals, which obviously connect to your positive and negative here. So it's very user-friendly, easy to connect. The supply voltage is 12 or 24 volts, and it has a max of 15 amps, and that would be during like the startup phase. That would be the only time you'd really be pulling anything close to 15 amps. I'm going to show you a couple different ways to power this thing, the couple of ways that I've powered these units in the past. One is battery and one is just 110 to a converter, but I'll show you both options there. The only thing I wanted to mention real quick was if you are going to use this type of lead here, I would definitely put an inline fuse in here, rated at 15 amps. So if anything goes wrong, your fuse will pop and your wires won't melt, and you know, for safety reasons. So easy to change a fuse if needed. So we'll get into the two different options that I use to power these things. So a couple options for powering the diesel heater are this 110 converter, so 110 to 12 volt. You can get these on Amazon. I'll post a link below. And this is rated to exactly what this requires, which is 110 converted to 12 volt, 15 amps, 180 watts. And this thing's dirt cheap, very easy to install. So if you're going to hardwire this in a home or something, this is a very easy way to go. You just connect your lines here and then to the unit. So very simple. I have one of these in the garage over here, running my garage diesel heater. So that's one route to go. So the other option would be to use a portable power bank, like a Jackery or something like that. I built my own little power bank here, and what it is just a 50 amp hour LiFePO battery with like a fuse blocks and a few inputs and outputs, nothing crazy, and a Harbor Freight case. And this was way cheaper than a Jackery and works just as well. So we're just going to be connecting it through the SAE connector, which is what I have for charging and power. And then you just pick up an SAE cable, something like this. So it'd go SAE to inline fuse and then connect to your terminals there. And you can get this as long as you want. And I would recommend a little bit thicker gauge wire than what was included with this guy. So for demonstration purposes, we're actually going to use this portable unit. That's how I run mine for winter camping in my ice fishing hub and keep that super warm. It's like a sauna at times. But we're going to get this thing hooked up. We're going to prime it, and then we're going to fire it up and see how well this thing performs. I'm actually going to go ahead and fill up the tank a little bit so we can get this thing fired up and tested. Wanted to bring up, as far as fuel and filling, pick up one of these transfer pumps. You can get this one from Harbor Freight, super cheap, and this thing's a game changer for filling up precise amounts and not spilling and not making a mess. And I just throw this like in a trash bag in a bin when I'm camping and stuff. So we'll go ahead and add some fuel here. All right. That looks pretty good. We'll do about a quarter tank just for demonstration purposes. No mess. Very nice. All right, let's go ahead and plug her in, see if she powers on. All right, we fired up the unit, and currently it is self-priming. I looked up whether I need to prime it ahead of time, and I believe this unit just self-primes, so that's what you hear the ticking right now. That's the fuel pump sending fuel into the diesel heater, and then once it reaches that, it should start firing up here. You can see my setup to the left, my exhaust that is going out of the garage through a pipe. It's the same pipe I use in my ice fishing hub. All right, the burn chamber is starting up. Kind of sounds like a jet engine at first. As long as it's primed, it should fire up here any second. Just so you know, it does blow cold air initially until that chamber heats up, which I'm starting to feel some warmth already. It's been, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds. Yep, it's firing up all right. All right, temp check. Now this is just on the black plastic. If you actually hit the metal, some serious heat coming out. I will attach the extension hose here so we can get a little more accurate reading. That's nice and hot. Working great, and the ticking is definitely quieted down. It's way more quiet than my Pelican case one I built. So far, so good. All right, let's get a temp check on the exhaust. That seems about right. It's very hot. That's normal. Let's do a temp check on the piping that I use. Yep. That's the top of the pipe that I run under the skirt of my tent. So never been an issue on full blast. 90 degrees isn't going to hurt the tent. So heater is on full blast at the moment. Everything's looking good. I am close to the unit so you can hear the fuel pump ticking noise. It is very, very silent. They advertise whisper quiet, and I didn't believe it, but I'm not hearing the ticking at all, which is incredible. That's one of the biggest complaints on these things. That sounds really good. And obviously this is on high, so the fan noise is a little loud, but it's nothing crazy, especially for how much heat you're getting. All right, this thing's been running for about 5 minutes now on high. I added the little extension hose here with the duct. We're gonna do a temp check. (176 degrees). That is very hot. That is nice. This thing is running great. I have really no complaints thus far. So there it is on high. I'm going to turn it down to medium, do another temp check. Then I'm going to shut everything down and do the pros and cons and my final thoughts, and maybe a few things I would add to upgrade the unit. Temp check on level 5 heating. It goes from 1 to 10. So this is on medium. Still nice and toasty warm, just not as much speed on the fan. All right, we have it set to level 1, which is the lowest setting. This is what I typically run overnight while I'm sleeping in my ice fishing hub, my insulated hub. It just keeps it toasty warm, and literally you can run this thing forever, it seems. 24 to 30 hours on a full tank, which is crazy. Uses very, very low power. Like I said, after you get it started up, it just barely sips any power. So this thing's super efficient. And then we'll do a temp check on level 1 here. Not a very accurate temp check, but you can see there's definitely some heat coming out of there. 140, 135. Let's just call it 140. That is plenty warm in an insulated tent or in an insulated van or whatever you have a use for this thing. Awesome. One thing I forgot to test was this remote control. Let's see. All right. Yep, that works awesome. Control the temp up and down, or the fan speed, and can turn it off and on. That is sweet. Awesome. Very cool. Let's discuss the pros and cons of this unit. Pro number 1 would absolutely be the cost. At the time of filming, this was retailing on Temu for $97. When I purchased this a few weeks ago, it was on super sale for $47.50. I had to buy it for that price. Pro number 2 would be the shape and size of this unit. And what I mean by that is the stability. This cube shape is very stable. Other Chinese diesel heaters. You can get the all-in-ones in the tall version, which are a little top heavy. Not a big fan of those. So overall, the shape and size of this is cube form, very sturdy, stable. I also like the feet that are included with this for different mounting options. And it also raises the unit up a little bit for the exhaust, things like that. That's a great feature. Pro number 3 would be, and this applies to pretty much all Chinese diesel heaters, they are super efficient and they're super hot. And that's really what you're looking for in a diesel heater. Pro number 4 would be the ease of assembly. As you saw in the video, it's literally just a exhaust hose and an intake hose and a couple of hose clamps. So pretty straightforward. I like that. I also like the access hole on the side of the case to access those hose clamps. That was very well thought out, and I really appreciated that. Pro number 5 would be the fact that they included a remote and that the remote actually works, because I've had other Chinese diesel heaters where they did not work. So this is a great addition if you're in your rooftop tent and you want to fire this thing up, dial it up or down. Super handy, super easy. This is a nice bonus. And along with the remote, I really like this short piece of directional tubing for directional heating. Obviously, you can get longer pieces of this and make your own ductwork and get crazy with it, but just a nice little bonus. Now for the cons. Number 1, the instruction manual. Not great. They usually aren't, but the instruction manual that came with this literally did not show this unit at all. It was just a generic exploded view diagram of a generic diesel heater. That also applies to the control panel functions. Very confusing. Your best bet is just to YouTube control panel functions on the diesel heater. These are very common and standard on a lot of units, so that would be my tip on that. Con number 2 would be the exhaust tubing length. I know this is probably a standard size and it would work for most applications, but for me, I like it to be a little bit longer just to route the exhaust fumes away from like the intake and things like that. So you can definitely buy cheap exhaust tubing in different lengths, so not a big deal. Con 3 would be the control panel itself. Like I said earlier, this is pretty standard with a lot of Chinese diesel heaters. There are some more modern control panels out there, but they all essentially do the same thing. There's some functions in here that you wouldn't know how to use or what they do, so definitely YouTube that, like a timer and a shutoff, things like that. Overall, the functions are there on the control panel. It's on, off, heating and fan levels up and down. That's really all there is to it. Con number 4 would probably be the fuel tank window here. It is nice that they have that, and it does show the lower half of the tank, so you know when you're getting low. It would be nice if it was all the way to the top, so you could see the total volume of the tank when you're filling without having to look in the cap. So not a big deal, but just an easy thing they could have added there. Con 5 would be the wiring that this came with. These are very thin gauged wires with the ring terminals, and there is no inline fuse. I'm sure this probably works fine, but to be safe, you're going to want to upgrade that to something like this with a thicker gauge wire, inline fuse. And then your application will be different. You're probably going to be plugging this into a jackery, so you may not need the SAE cable, but you have a lot of options there. Just make sure a little bit thicker gauge wire and an inline fuse for safety. Final thoughts on this Wippro all-in-one diesel heater purchase from Temu. If you're looking to get your first all-in-one diesel heater and not break the bank, I absolutely recommend this unit right here. This is an older model from Wippro, probably last year's model, but there's nothing wrong with it at all. The newer model may have a larger tank and some other little features, but it's still going to have the same performance. The number one thing with these Chinese diesel heaters is safety, and diesel heaters in general, just safety first. Like I mentioned before, you don't want any of the exhaust gases entering and blowing through the unit. Speaking of safety, please use carbon monoxide detectors when using a diesel heater, just for safety reasons. I use 2 just to be super safe. All-in-one diesel heaters are a great addition to your camping gear. The cost to run these is super affordable, and you're getting a reliable and efficient dry heat. I didn't have high hopes for this $47 diesel heater from Temu, but I'm actually blown away overall. This unit shipped locally from a local distributor in New Jersey, so I received this in 2 to 3 days. It didn't ship from China. I didn't have to wait 2 weeks to get it, so that was great. Speaking of Temu, I'll be posting links to this unit below, and I'll also be posting a coupon code here, and also some coupon links and affiliate links to some Temu products related to this. Thanks for watching. Links below. Hopefully this was valuable information, and I really appreciate you watching. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thanks again. Take care. What is this called? What do you call this? What is this? What is this? What is this?